kind of start. We got 31 attendees tonight. Appreciate y'all being part of this. If you have any questions, please, the one thing I ask you as we go through the seminar, if you want to type your question, and after Brandon gets done going through his PowerPoint, I'll come back on and we'll answer your questions. And Brandon, good luck tonight, and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I sure appreciate it. I really appreciate Navionics for giving me this opportunity, and Yo-Zuri for obviously being my hard bait sponsor, and for making such great topwater baits that they do, which allows me to do what I do on the water. And as soon as I got sponsored by Yo-Zuri, I was looking at their product line, and I just kept noticing that they had some great looking topwater baits. So whenever I placed that first tackle order and got to start experimenting with all these awesome topwater baits that they make, I really think that that's when it kind of took my topwater fishing to the next level. I've always been a topwater fan, always enjoyed it, but I've just fell in love with these Yo-Zuri topwaters that I'm going to be talking about tonight. But like I said, just all my sponsors, Suzuki's been with me for 6 years now. My title sponsor, couldn't think of a better title sponsor and a great company to represent. So let's just go ahead and dive into topwater fishing seminar here. So this right here, this first shot is just it's a Japanese magazine that they did a little piece on that topwater deal that I had going at Ross Barnett. So I thought that was pretty cool. Somebody mailed me that Japanese magazine, and I was like, that's pretty sweet to get featured in that. So I'm just going to scroll down here. So the reason I love topwater fishing, it just brings me back to my childhood. This right here is a picture of me, my brother, and my dad. And, that's what I grew up doing. We did a lot of live bait fishing, night crawlers, stuff like that. But when we did fish with artificial, we were throwing topwaters. We were throwing little walking baits and catching spotted bass and largemouth and smallmouth up on Norris Lake. So, anytime I have a topwater in my hand, it really brings back some fond memories of my childhood, and what really, got me hooked on bass fishing was watching those bass come up out of the water and explode on a topwater bait. It's unlike anything else in bass fishing, in my opinion. And that's why I really tend to gravitate towards topwater fishing when I can. So we titled this topwater fishing in the summer, but once I started thinking about it, I wanted to expand it to basically for the whole year, because topwater fishing is definitely at its prime in the summer, but you can catch them pretty much anytime the water's above 50. And so some parts of the country, like down in Florida, you're going to catch them on topwater literally 12 months out of the year. Probably here in Tennessee where I live, it runs from basically, I would say, the end of March through the middle of December usually is when the topwater bite dies. So, we're throwing topwaters, 9 to 10 months out of the year up here in Tennessee. And so basically, I'm just going to kind of walk you through the seasons, walk you through the bait selection, but then, what time of year that I like to to fish with these baits. So probably the bait that I throw in the coldest water temperature is weight baits. And so, weight baits are, they come in all shapes and sizes and different actions. But for me, I really like to dial it in to two different weight baits. We have a dual hardcore noisy. And so dual hardcore is, basically it's the same company as Yo-Zuri, just a different brand. But this noisy is a great weight bait. It comes in a large size and a junior size. And so I like to throw that maybe when the water temp gets a little bit warmer. So, that 55 to 62 degree water temp, that's when I'm going to be throwing that dual noisy. But the first topwater bait that I go to is just a vintage long A, not any of the new ones out on the market. It's an old one. and basically the older ones are lighter and they don't dive down as much. And so the way you can figure out if you have a vintage one or not is the eye in the rear of the bait, basically the rear eye where the treble hook is attached to. You will see that there's an oversized ring on the vintage ones, and the new ones just have a normal ring. So that's how you can tell the difference. But get on eBay, you can find them on there. But basically, that's the first topwater bait that I will use is that Longay. It does very well in cold water. Like I said, I've caught them, 50-degree water. Some guys even throw it in upper 40s sometimes if the conditions are right. But basically, March and April, anytime it's pre-spawn, I'm going to probably be throwing that Longay. And so, the conditions that I look for when I'm Longay fishing are a partly cloudy day. I feel like if it's super sunny, that's really not the best. But if it's really dark and cloudy, that's not the best. I feel like those partly cloudy days where the sun's peeping through the clouds every so often, those are those, good pre-spawn days when the fish are looking up and they're really feeding upward. And so basically, I look for those conditions with a little bit of wind. And basically what I'm doing is I'm throwing that Longay, in pre-spawn areas, any type of points out in front of spawning pockets. I'm throwing them around docks, leading into spawning pockets, basically anywhere where those pre-spawn females and males, for that matter, will be staging up. The Longay catches smallmouth, largemouth, and spotted bass. So, obviously, if you're smallmouth fishing, you're going to want to be fishing around clay, some clay and rock transition banks. Pea gravelly points are a great place for smallmouth to stage on. Spotted bass tend to stage on docks a little bit more than the other two species, and largemouth. It's hard to beat just a good main lake point leading back into a small pocket leading off to the main lake. If there's any kind of wood cover, lay downs, stumps, anything like that, it makes it that much better. But basically, that's kind of my wait bait for the pre-spawn. And then once they go on the beds and the immediate post-spawn, that's when I'm going to lean on that dual noisy. It's a little bit louder. It's got that a blade in the back, that prop in the back that makes a lot of noise. It's jointed. So it has a really nice action, that tail action, and then just real short bill on that bait. So you can reel it a little bit faster than the Longay and still get it to wake. Whereas on the Longay, if you reel it too fast, it'll tend to dive on you. But one thing to be aware of is that wake baits are very conditional. There's some days that they're on them, other days that they're not on them. So that's been a learning process for me. Is I might get on a really good wake bait bite, on a practice day, and come back on tournament day, and the conditions have changed. Whether the wind has stopped a little bit, or it's gotten too sunny, or maybe it's gotten too cloudy, and it just kind of throws it off completely. And so you have to know when to put that bait down. But the rod reel line that I like to use when I'm wake bait fishing, basically I like to use a 7-foot medium action Veritas bait casting rod. I'm going to pair that up with a Abu Garcia MGX, and I'm going to use 30-pound dual hardcore braid. It's an 8-carrier braid. It's super slick, casts very far. And then I'll just put like a 12-pound mono leader right in front of that. And the leader doesn't have to be too long, 18 inches, 20 inches, something like that is perfect. But that MGX is great to throw baits, especially the Longay is kind of hard to cast. It's kind of a light bait. But that dual noisy weighs a lot more, and you can cast it a little bit better. So let's go to the next section. So poppers, I love throwing a popper anytime around the spawn to early summer. And so, basically the water temp would be 62 to 75 degrees. That's what I'm looking for when I'm throwing a popper. I feel like a popper does a great job of catching those fish actually on the bed, as well as just immediate coming off of the bed, guarding fry, stuff like that. So, what makes this Yozuri 3DB pop so good is that, it's a pretty compact size. It's not like not one of the large poppers, but it weighs a lot for its size. So, I can make pinpoint casts. I can cast it around bushes, laydowns, docks, and I think that's the key when you're fishing with a popper, especially around the spawn, is to make those pinpoint casts and really get in there, where you think that the fish are spawning or garden fry. And so, everybody always asks when you're fishing with poppers, do you want to pop it or do you want to walk it? And I just judge that by day. Sometimes I'm going to be doing a slow pop, really just kind of soaking the bait in there and just popping it real slow. And then there's other days they want it walked. And so I just kind of experiment at the first part of the day just to try to get a feel for what they want. And then once I start catching a fish on one versus the other, then that's when I'll lean to that one cadence. So this is a great walking popper. Actually, I tell people this popper probably wants to walk more than it wants to pop. So it's super easy to walk. Just fast twitch, and it'll just go right back and forth, just like any other walking bait on the market. But this is obviously a popper. Some poppers don't walk that good, but this one definitely does. But to get this one to have that good pop, just basically just kind of a slower pull, with a tight line. If you pop slack with this bait, it's going to walk. If you keep a tight line and pull, then it'll pop. And so the rod, reel, and line combination that I use on this is it's going to be very similar to the weight baits, but I'll probably go down to a 610 medium light Veritas. And just a little bit shorter rod helps me make more pinpoint casts. But I'm going to use the same reel, just a Revo MGX. Love that reel for topwater fishing. And if I'm fishing around light cover, I'll do 30-pound braid. If I'm fishing around bushes and laydowns and stuff like that, then I'll bump it up to 40-pound, dual hardcore braid. And I'll bump up my leader as well. I'll probably do more of a 14 or maybe even a 17-pound mono leader on that. Similar 18 inches to 20 inches as far as the length of the leader. So let's go on to buzz baits. Buzz baits are a big player in the fall. Everybody knows that. September through November, even December for that matter. It just that's when it excels. And so anytime the water temperature is 58 to 75 degrees would be a good time to throw a buzz bait in the fall. You can cover lots of water with buzz baits, and I think that's what makes it so good is that you can present that buzz bait to that many more fish, and you can just cover that many more miles of shoreline in a day. You just can cover more water with that than you can pretty much any other traditional topwater bait. But there's two different types of buzz baits that I like to throw. We've got a head knocker, and then we have a traditional. So the traditional is more along the lines of like a lunker lure. Yamamoto makes it just a really good traditional buzz bait. And by traditional, I mean it doesn't have like a clacker on it. It doesn't have a head knocker. So it's more of a subtle buzz bait. But basically, I like the subtle buzz bait in clear water, and I like the head knocker in dingier water. I don't use any clacker styles. Those are the two styles that I like to throw. The head knocker is made by Zorro, And so basically that buzz blade just pretty much hits the head of the buzz bait. And so it makes a great sound, really good sound on that. You can hit the head hard and it'll be even a louder knock, or you can barely nick the head. So it gives you several different options. But like I said, I'm going to use more of the lunker lure, the Yamamoto style in the clear water, and then that head knocker in dingier water. As far as sizes go, I like to get away with the heavier head if I can. I can cast it further. So I normally gravitate to like a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce. But there are times, especially if the water is really clear, then I'll go down to a little bit lighter head, like a 1/4 ounce or something like that. But usually I'm gravitating to a heavier head. I can just cast it further and keep that bait in the strike zone longer. So basically I try to keep it simple on the colors. I throw a lot of black and I throw a lot of white, and basically I just try to figure out what they want for that day. There's sometimes when it's sunny they like black, but then there's also times when it's cloudy that they like black. So I can't really sit here and say that one color does better under a certain weather condition. It's just kind of one of those deals. There's some days they're on black and some days they're on more of the white or the shad tones. And so sometimes I like to throw a buzzbait with the skirt with just kind of like a little paddle tail trailer or something like that. And then there's other times I'll take the skirt completely off and just put like a buzz toad on there. So that's something too that I just kind of play around with and practice, trying to figure out what I get more bites on. But definitely I always have some kind of trailer on there, whether it's threading the trailer up under the skirt or taking the skirt completely off and just going just strictly with the plastic trailer with no skirt. I feel like those fish hold on to the bait that much longer, and definitely increases your landing ratio for sure. So the rod reel line that I like to use, I really like to throw braid with my buzz baits. There's some guys that swear that fluorocarbon's that better than braid, but I really think braid is the best way to go. I'm going to throw a 7-foot medium action Veritas, and basically that same MGX with 40-pound dual hardcore. So you can kind of see that I keep my rod, reel, and line pretty consistent through a lot of the Topwater baits that I like to throw. I feel like that setup that I have with the 40-pound braid, with that 7-foot medium Veritas, I just have a great hookup ratio, great landing ratio. And, with that 7-foot medium action, I'm not jerking the bait away from the fish. It definitely gives me that extra second for that, basically to load up on the fish. So, I feel like if I was throwing braid with a 7-foot medium heavy, I would probably be jerking it away from those fish a little bit more. So that's why I go to the medium action rod. So let's go on down to prop baits. So favorite time that I like to throw a prop bait, in Florida, it's going to be from January through March. Anytime that the bass are spawning or the brim are spawning. In Tennessee or this kind of middle section of the country, I'm really throwing those prop baits when the brim are spawning. I can't think of a better bait to use for brim bed fishing than a prop bait. So basically the water temp in these situations are 65 to 75 degree temperatures. That's when the brim really spawn hard. And so this 3DB prop is one of my favorite prop baits. And what makes it so good is that it has that plastic prop on the back. So, pretty much every other prop bait on the market has a metal prop, which in certain situations is a great choice. But I feel like with that plastic prop, I can get more bites. I can fish behind people. It's more subtle. It's more of a subtle prop bait than the other ones on the market, and it just gets you a lot more bites. And so, it's a different sound. And in the tournaments that we fish, fishing pressure, really is a big factor. And so this bait casts very well. It's kind of a heavier bait. And basically the cadence that I like to use with this prop bait is just a twitch, pause, twitch, pause. And that's what I like to do. I can cover a lot of water with it, and really figure out where those brim are spawning, and try to key in on those areas. So I want to use the same rod reel line that I was using, the 7-foot medium action with the MGX and the 40-pound braid. And so there's most of the situations when I'm fishing around grass, like in Florida, I'm going to tie directly to the bait. I'm not going to have any, mono leader or nothing like that. But if I'm fishing like more of the clear water lakes, like up here in Tennessee, when the brim are spawning, then I'll go to like a 17-pound mono leader, like an 18 or 20-inch mono leader, just so those fish don't see that braid. So let's go on down here. Frog fishing is, I would say, frog fishing is my second favorite topwater bait. A walking bait is my favorite, which I'm getting ready to talk about in the next section. But anytime I'm on a frog bite, I really tend to excel. I learned how to throw a frog by a buddy of mine, Steve Moy, that I actually competed against in college. And he took me to Kentucky Lake, and we jacked him on a frog. It was like in May, I don't even know, 10 years ago, something like that. And we just waylaid him. And ever since that day, I have been addicted to frog fishing. So pretty much anytime there's grass, whether that's, just flooded bank grass like we have here in Tennessee, like up on Cherokee Lake, or, if we're at Gunnersville and there's just mats everywhere, anytime I can find grass, I'm going to really try to exploit a frog and, get on that frog bite. So my favorite time is pretty much May through August, like any time in the summer, even in the fall and post, in the spring as well. But anytime in the summer, that's when a frog bite really shines. Water temperatures anywhere from 70 to 90 degrees. And so, the frogs that I like to throw, I try to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to throw just a Spro bronze-eye frog. I'm also going to throw a Spro popping frog, and then I throw a little snag-proof mouse. So those are kind of the ones that I, lean on the most. Obviously, if you looked at my frog box, I probably got every frog that's made ever in the history of frog fishing. Just because I just like to try them all. But I tend to always go back to those Spro frogs. They just have a great action. In my opinion, they walk better than any other frog on the market. I'm not even sponsored by them, but I always throw the frog. I always throw the Spro frogs. Those are the ones I always lean on. But basically, I'm going to throw the bronze-eye frog anywhere where I'm fishing mats or heavy grass. It's got a 4/0 hook. It's a little bit bigger than the popping frog, and it's got that pointed nose. So what that pointed nose does is it lets you come through the mats, the duckweed mats, all the thick stuff without really getting that grass on the front of the bait. Whereas with the popping frog, if you try to throw that through some of that real thick stuff, it'll ball the grass up on the nose of the bait, which obviously fouls the bait up, and you just have to reel it in and get that grass off. So that's the reason why I choose the bronze-eye frog when I'm fishing in thick stuff. When I'm fishing in the thinner stuff, sparse mats, sparse duckweed, stuff like that, overhanging limbs, docks, anywhere in open water, I'm going to be throwing the popping frog. The popping frog has a 3/0 hook, which is a little bit smaller, obviously, than the bronze-eye. but it still hooks them really well. But basically with that popping frog, it walks. Honestly, I think it walks better than the Spro Bronzeye. Has a great side-to-side walking action. And what makes this frog better than the other ones is that not only can you walk it, but you can pop it. So there's some situations where, one cast, it just everything looks right to just pop the frog. And so I'll just do like a slow pop. And then there's other times, where I feel like I need to walk the frog. And so whenever I have this frog in my hand, it just gives me options. I can do what I want to with it, and really show those fish different cadences and try to figure out what they want for that situation. But basically, they're ready to fish right out of the package. I trim the legs just a little bit. I make one leg a little bit smaller than the other. It kind of helps the walking action when you do that. And then I'll also bend the hooks up just a little bit, just to kind of open that hook up just a little bit to get a little bit better hookup ratio. And so, I've talked about the Spro Frogs, but this little guy down here, this snag-proof mouse, I like to throw this deal as a follow-up lure, or anytime I'm faced with really high pressure fishing, like if there's just a lot of boats in an area and I feel like I'm fishing behind somebody. This little snag-proof mouse is probably half the size of the Bronzeye frog. It's teeny tiny. So it's a little bit harder to cast, but it still has a nice hook in it, very stout hook. And, you can it's super subtle. So you can just kind of go in there. If you've had a big fish blow up on your frog and you throw it back in there a few times and you can't catch that fish, then I'll pull out this little mouse and show them this smaller profile. And sometimes I can get those fish to come up and eat that bait. And then also, like I said, if I'm fishing around a lot of other boats, there's not many guys out on the tournament scene that throw this little bait. So, you can get a lot more bites that way as well. But the rod reel line that I use whenever I'm fishing the Spro Frogs, the Bronzeye and the Poppin' Frog, is just a 7.6 heavy action Veracity bait cast rod with a Revo rocket. High speed reel. A high speed bait cast reel is the best reel to use when frog fishing. Some guys will argue with you and say that they need a slower gear ratio for extra torque, but I'm here to tell you, especially the Revo rocket. I can't speak on other brands, but the Revo rocket is the fastest reel on the market, and it still has a lot of torque. But the reason you want a fast reel is that if you have a fish blow up on your frog and you miss that fish, you want to get the frog back to you and cast back in there as fast as possible. And that reel does that job better than any other reel on the market. It's super smooth, but basically just that speed, and also if you're twitching a frog and you see a fish, blow up across the mat or whatever, you can, obviously reel on and fire over there and catch that fish. So the line that I use, 65-pound Yozuri Super 8 braid. It's a super stout braid, probably the strongest braid that I've ever used. Cast really well, and so that's what I use for the Spro. For that little mouse, I'm going to use the same rod and reel, but I'm going to scale down my line to 50-pound Yozuri braid. 50-pound casts a little bit better. Obviously that snag-proof mouse is a smaller bait, so I go down in line size to be able to cast a little bit better. So let's go on down to walking baits, which is obviously my favorite way of topwater fishing. I've made a lot of money throwing a walking bait, especially this Yozuri 3DB pencil. I threw it at Texoma that year that I finished second to Greg Hackney. I was throwing it at Ross Barnett last year when I was leading the tournament after day one. But it's a very special bait. I mean, I'm talking about walking baits in general, but I'm also talking about this 3DB pencil specifically. But, anytime here in Tennessee from April to December, water temperature, I got 56 to 90 degrees. That's when I throw a walking bait. So, obviously it's a very broad window. I feel like a walking bait has a broader window than any other topwater bait on the market. All the other topwater baits are, pretty conditional, but a walking bait, catches fish in cool water as well as super hot water. So, places I like to throw a walking bait are pretty much anywhere and everywhere. I want to be throwing it on main lake points. I want to be throwing it around docks, wood, you name it. At Texas Summit that year, I was throwing it around bushes. At Ross Barnett, I was throwing it down sea walls, fishing it in boat slips. So pretty much you name it, that's where you want to throw a walking bait. You can catch smallmouth on it up north, just throwing it over, gravelly flats with boulders. Largemouth fishing down here. You can even throw it on the outside of grass lines, like if you're on Gunnersville, Chickamauga. Anywhere that you want to throw it, you'll probably catch fish on a walking bait. But let's just dive into what makes the 3DB pencil so special. For one, it has a sound like any other walking bait. Some walking baits have rattles, other walking baits are silent. This one has a one knocker, and there's some other baits on the market that have one knockers, but this one just sounds different. And in my opinion, it draws fish better than any other one I've used. And so what makes this bait so special is that it's kind of a smaller walking bait. Some of those other walking baits on the market are real big and bulky and, tend to only, catch big fish with those baits. But this one, you can catch numbers with it as well as big fish because it has a big sound, but it's a small profile. Like some of the other Yo-Zuri baits I've already mentioned, they tend to be on the heavy side, so you can cast them really well. I feel like having a heavy topwater bait is key. You don't want a light bait that's going to catch the wind and be hard to cast. So, this Yo-Zuri 3DB pencil, it's small for its size, but it weighs a lot. So you can make a good underhand roll cast around cover. You can also, launch it just like a, rear back and chuck it for a mile if you're fishing, more open water. So the rod reel and line is very similar to what I've already said. It's a 7-foot medium action Veritas with the MGX with a 40-pound, 40-pound dual hardcore braid. But I'm going to use a 20-pound mono leader in this situation. I feel like on a walking bait, you can get away with a little bit bigger leader, and a lot of times I'm fishing around heavy cover. So, that's why I go to that thicker mono. But basically that's it as far as my details on walking baits. And then, that kind of wraps up everything. I want to leave plenty of time for a question and answer session, but in my last slide here, has one of my favorite verses, Matthew 4:19. Come follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. So I just kind of wanted to leave you guys with that. I feel like, bass fishing has provided me with a great platform to tell people about the Lord. And so, that verse really speaks to me because not only am I out here, fishing for fish, but I'm also, fishing, being a fisher's of men as well. So please, send your questions through. I would like to go ahead and open it up. Tom, if we could get some questions rolling through, and we can see what people want to ask.
Yeah, good stuff. Real good information. I'll wait till a couple questions start popping up. One of the things that come to mind, Brandon, I'd like to get your opinion on is fishing braid versus mono. I mean, where are you at with that? I mean, because that's a question I hear a lot of people ask all the time.
Yeah. So basically, I was a mono guy for pretty much, all my life, from being a kid all the way up until about, I guess it was 4 years ago when I made the switch. And so I had heard about people, fishing with braid, but I was like, oh, I don't need it. I catch enough fish with mono, I don't need it. So I kind of held out. And finally I was like, I'm just going to give it a try. And so I spooled up some braid. I think it was 30 pound at the time or whatever. Spooled it up, took it out there, and I was shocked. I was like, "Holy cow! I can't believe I didn't switch earlier." And so, basically, I feel like it makes that bait do what you want it to do that much better. So if you want to, walk a bait, it's going to walk so much better. I mean, you twitch it and it does what you want it to do. With mono, there's so much stretch, you got to like twitch it really hard to like get it to just walk a little bit. With braid, it just does much of a better job. Also with braid, whenever you're walking a bait, you can actually, walk it to the point to where it spits really well, like just like a quick twitch of the wrist, especially if it's a little bit harder than just a normal twitch. You can get the bait to spit, and so that's what I think, really helps increase your bites is just having that bait throwing water from side to side as well as the walking. So that's the number one reason.
Good.
Castability, you can cast that much further with braid, and also it's easier to make those pinpoint casts with braid, especially that lighter braid, that 30 to 40 pound braid. Really comes off the spool nicely. Mono tends to have a lot of memory, and so that was something that I always struggled with was just getting good casting distance and accuracy with mono. So braid helps me on several different aspects of the game. Also, the hookup ratio is key. On a long cast, back when I used to throw mono on a long cast, like I would have to reel down and just set the hook like a madman to hook, just to try to hook the fish.
Yep.
And so now with braid on a super long cast, all I have to do is just kind of reel down and lean into them, and they're pegged. So, you know, I would encourage everybody, if they haven't experimented with braid, definitely do it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, we got some questions to ask you. Doesn't the vintage long A run below the surface since it has a small bill? Asks Claus.
Well, yes, if you reel it fast, but you have to keep your rod tip up and reel it really slowly. And so it's a lighter plastic. I wish y'all could feel a vintage one versus a one that you buy at Bass Pro Shops, but it's lighter, and it just stays up a little bit better. But yeah, you can't reel it very fast. I mean, it's a very slow presentation. So that's why that bait excels in cold water is that it's super slow. It's got some nice rattles in it. So when that bait's kind of doing its thing, that those rattles are jingling around a little bit, and it's just super subtle, man. But yeah, basically keep the rod tip up and just real slow. And once it starts waking, you can kind of speed up a little bit, but definitely, right after you make that cast, the initial, 5, 10, 15 feet, you definitely got to reel slowly. And then once it kind of starts doing its thing and swimming back, and you can pick up the pace just a little bit.
It's a great bait. And like you said too during the seminar, I'll share with everybody. Look on eBay for that stuff because you can't get your local Bass Pros.
No.
What about your favorite reel for topwater fishing from Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, it's that Abu Garcia MGX, high speed. I'm going to go to the high speed MGX. It's like an 8 something to 1. But that MGX is, I mean, I'm not trying to be a salesman, but it's a game changer. I mean, it really does cast super far, and especially some of these, the poppers and some of these other baits are not as heavy as some of the other baits that we use, but it'll cast a popper just as far as you want to cast it. So that MGX is definitely, anytime I'm throwing top water, that's what I'm using.
It's amazing to me the reels are 8 to 1 now. I mean, I remember 5-6 years ago, 6-3 to 1, or I mean now.
Yeah, oh yeah, like a 6-3 to 1 was like a high speed back in the day.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, question from I think this is from Kent. Where did this come from? Hold on one second. From Kent. He wants to know, do you have a time or place when the buzz toad works better over a skirted buzz bait?
Hey, guy. Let's see here. I was ending my Facebook Live. But yeah, so not really. I mean, it's just, it's kind of like one of those things that I just experiment with, and just kind of play with it day by day. I feel like I like the look of a buzzbait with the swim bait trailer. That's kind of what I like to do. But everybody's proven how deadly a buzz toad is on the back of a buzzbait. So I always keep that honest too. But I would say if I'm fishing in an area where I feel like other guys are throwing a buzzbait with the buzz toad on the back, then I'm probably going to go to that skirt with like a little swim bait trailer. But I'll probably have 2 tied on and just kind of see how I go. Actually, I'll probably have more than that. I would have I have a black option and I have a white option, and then I'll have one with the skirt. So if I'm buzzbait fishing, I got at least 3 or 4 tied on, and so that's what I like to do. Anytime I'm fishing, especially practicing for a tournament, is that in practice, I mean, I have a lot of different options on there, on the deck of my boat, and just try to get dialed in as much as I can. Some other guys, are just going to keep it super simple, and like if they're going to throw a buzz bait, then it's always going to be a buzz toad, and that's their way of doing things. Me, I like to obviously overanalyze my bait selection. But yeah, I just try to figure out what they want for that day, and just kind of go with it from there.
The buzz toads, it started to get a little bit of, I guess, cred, you might say. I mean, people are starting to finally talk about it when they've
a
couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started, in the Carolinas, Lake Norman and all those places. That's where those guys. I think Chris Bumgardner, might have been one of the early guys to bust that bait out. But it's kind of like anything else. I mean, if you show those fish something just a little bit different, you can really increase your bites throughout the day. So back when everybody was throwing skirted buzz baits, then when that thing came out, then obviously that increased your bite ratio that much more. Now I think there's more guys that throw buzz baits with the buzz toad on there than a skirt. So I think it's fair game now. As far as what to do. But I do think that having a buzz toad on there or a swim bait trailer, that's definitely going to help your hookup ratio for sure. If you just have a skirt on there, those fish don't have anything to hold on to. So definitely having the plastic on the back, really helps.
So next question's from Jim. He wants to know what kind of knots you're using for your frogs and walking baits.
So anytime I'm throwing a frog, with obviously with that heavier braid, I'm going to throw a double Polymer. Sorry, I had a brain
There you
fart. Just a double polymer knot. I feel like that's going to be the strongest knot for braid in that situation. Basically, I really only tie two different knots when I'm fishing with braid. I throw that double polymer, and then I throw a snell. If I'm flipping or punching, I'm going to snell. But I feel like that's the strongest braid knot out there. So that's what I do with frog fishing. With the 3DB pencil, with the walking baits, I'm going to throw a loop knot. And the loop knot that I throw is, it's actually the Rapala loop knot. Some other guys, have like a double loop and, do some different things with it. But I've always thrown that Rapala knot, that loop knot that they came up with. And, it's easy to tie and it works really well. So I don't want the loop to be super big. I try to keep the loop on the small side of things. So, basically I would say like a 1/4 inch loop is plenty for, pretty much any type of topwater fishing. But, as far as the 3DB, popper, if I'm walking it, obviously I'm going to throw the loop knot. If I'm just popping it, then I want to cinch it down on the actual line tie. So in that situation, I'll probably do a with mono or fluorocarbon. I really like the improved clinch. So I would probably do an improved clinch, whenever I'm popping the popper. And then, pretty much the same thing with the prop bait. I'm just going to go with the improved clinch on that one as well.
Good. That was a pretty good answer there. This was the Rapala knot. I never knew the name of it. That's what I've always called it too. So
yeah.
One day. What do you? Yeah. Another question is, what do you find is the best knot to join braid to mono?
I do that one that's I think one name is like the Crazy Alberto, and then there's some other people call it the Crazy Alberto, and then the Albright, the modified Albright, but basically it's the same knot. So what I do whenever I'm throwing like these topwaters with 40-pound braid, I'll go basically 5 up the line. So basically I'll loop my line through the hole, and then I'll go 5 up and then 4 or 5 back. With 40-pound braid. Now, if I'm using like on spinning tackle, then I'll go 8 up and then 7 or 8 back. But it's just kind of a feel thing. As I go up higher in line size, then I don't do as many loops because I don't want to have just a huge knot there. I feel like it's overkill.
Any tips on lakes where the main forage is shad, for example, like Old Hickory fishing a topwater bait?
Yeah, I mean, just, really try to match the hatch. I mean, using these shad tones, Yo-Zuri's got some great mirror finishes. There's some of these, they call them prism, but basically like a prism shad or the prism ghost. They have like an internal like mirror basically, and so it's a lot of these color options are kind of translucent, and so anytime I'm faced with just a whole lot of shad, I really like to have something with a little bit of flash, and those Yo-Zuri baits obviously do that. Now, I mean, if it's cloudy or if the water's really dingied up, then I'm just going to go with the traditional bone. But yeah, I mean, all of those baits that I talked about, can resemble shad. I mean, really and truthfully, I mean, even if you look at the frogs, I mean, if you throw a white frog, that's going to resemble, an injured shad up on the surface. So basically, every category that I just talked about, definitely, looks like shad and can catch those fish that are feeding on shad.
Good. Do you always use direct tie, or are there times when you use a swivel?
Yeah, no swivels. Basically, just a direct tie. Now I'm looking at my baits here. I got them laid up on my table. The hardcore noisy comes with the snap, and I actually don't take that snap off. I tie directly to the snap. But pretty much everything else is, just a direct tie, either, being a loop knot or, tying directly to the eye of the bait.
Okay, Stephen is asking a question. 100 degrees, blue sky days. How long is the top water generally effective? Morning, evening?
Yeah, so obviously, morning and evening are going to be the prime times. That's when most of your surface activity is going to take place. So, that's when you're going to get the most bites is morning and evening. But if there's no clouds in the sky at all and it's just a bluebird sunny day, there's a lot of times where if you keep throwing that topwater bait, you can still catch them throughout the day. And, not a whole lot of people do that because it obviously takes more patience and your bites per hour, substantially goes down. But what I've seen and what I've noticed is that a lot of times those bigger fish will hit just in the, bright bluebird sunny, 12 o'clock, when you least expect it. And so, one thing that I would say in that situation, look for shade lines. If you want that topwater bait to last all day, if you're, jacking them on it and you don't want to put it down, which obviously I never want to put mine down, but I'm forced to sometimes. But key in on shade. Whether that's on the side of a dock, whether that's on a steeper bank, that's casting a shadow, tree lines, that's where you can really, lean on that topwater midday sunny, where you can get those bites, is on shade. And I don't know if you guys watched it or not, but Drew Benton, did that very thing at Lake Travis a couple months ago. He literally threw a walking bait all day long. And so, he was actually fishing. This was kind of a cool deal, but he was fishing shade under the water. So basically, he was going and looking for ledge rock that was under the water that was casting shade. So that was a pretty cool deal. Most people look for shade that's, visible. Obviously, that's what we're prone to do. Shade on top of the surface. But he was throwing his bait down those ledge rock lines, and those fish just have that little bit of shade, and they feel comfortable, and they'll come up and blast the topwater bait.
Good deal. So on your walking baits, do you prefer a short round bend treble hook or the short EWG treble hooks?
As far as all of my topwaters go, I'm always going to throw round bend. I feel like, the more I fish, the more I'm pretty much going to round bend for everything. Like I got on that EWG craze. Kevin Van Dam won the classic on it, and obviously, I stocked my boat full of EWGs and did that whole deal. But I really feel like a round bend treble hook just hooks the fish that are swapping at the bait as well as the fish that are eating the bait. Whereas an EWG does a great job of hooking the fish that's eating the bait, but I don't think it does as good of a job of hooking the fish that's just swapping at the bait because those points are turned back in. And so, like a lot of times when they swap at it, they're not going to get hooked. So that's why I'm definitely in topwater fishing and jerkbait fishing. It's always round bend, but I'm kind of almost leaning that way across the board. But something that's good about Yozuri is that out of the pack, like they're ready to go. Pretty much, every other brand that, Strike King and, all these other brands, like you get the bait out of the package and you put, fresh hooks on there, whether they're Mustad or Gamakatsu. Yozuri comes with a high quality Japanese hook and it's ready to go. Like I don't do anything to the bait. I take it out of the package and I tie it on.
Cool. So, hey, we'll finish up the evening. I got one last question for you. How do you feel the texture of the dual and Yozuri baits affect the presentation and hookup? I've picked up a few of them and I really like them. The design.
Yeah. So the question was the texture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, if you're looking at the 3DB prop, 3DB pop, or the 3DB pencil, they have ribs down the belly, and so the fish may feel that, may hold on to it a little bit longer. But what I think happens is you get a little bit more, whether it's bubbles or whatever the case may be, it does more to the bait, on the surface. And those fish, with their lateral line, I feel like they can, feel things like that, So those lines, those grooves are obviously catching water, as you're pulling the bait along.
You got one of those baits in your hand?
Yeah, I sure do.
Well, put it up to the camera and show them what you're talking about. There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, you can hear, like, as I rub my finger down, it's grooved all the way, and so that's on the pencil, the prop, and also on the pop. But yeah, I mean, I feel, those fish, when they clamp down on it, they may or may feel that. I don't know. More than likely, since it's a hard bait, probably not. They're just going to eat it and then obviously get hooked. But I do feel like that definitely helps with the bubble trail and different things like that. But just a super nice finish. Most Japanese baits on the market are good looking baits, and Yozuri's not any different. I mean, attention to detail is pretty awesome with these baits.
Good stuff, man. Thank you again, Brandon. Just finishing up. If you have any questions for the attendees that are on here, you're more than welcome to email help@navionics.com, and I'll get the questions over to Brandon over the next day or two. Appreciate everybody attending. Brandon, good luck the rest of the year. You got 2 more tournaments, and hope I'll get to see you at the AOI here in Georgia in a couple of months.
Yeah, that AOI is in your neck of the woods, so I hope to be there. I think I've got it calculated where I need 2 top 10s at these next 2 events to make it. So I got to finish the year strong, and hopefully I'm there fishing Lake 2 in the AOI.
Good stuff. Thank y'all.
I just appreciate the opportunity to do this webinar, and if any of you guys haven't seen some of the other webinars that the other Navionics guys are putting out, definitely need to. They're super informative. I know that Josh Douglas and Seth Fighter have done some really good ones. Sonar, Miles Berghoff has. So definitely go back in the archives and check those out as well.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, man. We got hey, and your buddy's coming up next month. Skylar Hamilton's going to do one for us.
Yeah, heck yeah. Skylar's right up the road for me, and he's a heck of a fisherman, so y'all should have fun with that one as well.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Good night. I appreciate it. Brandon, good luck, and I'll talk to you in the next couple of days. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody that attended.
Have a good night.
You too.